Good morning, evening, or night. Wherever you are, welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Saturday, 16th August 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy journeyed to Washington, D.C., alongside European leaders, to engage in crucial discussions with U.S. President Donald Trump concerning the ongoing conflict with Russia. Zelenskyy insisted that Russia must end the war, highlighting Russia's 2014 seizure of Ukrainian land as a springboard for a new attack. Prior to this, Trump met with Vladimir Putin in Alaska, discussing Ukraine's future, though a ceasefire remained elusive. Trump, seemingly deferential to Putin, now supports plans to cede Ukrainian territory as part of a peace deal. U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff indicated that Putin agreed to security protections for Ukraine, with Russia making certain concessions. Trump offered security guarantees to Ukraine to deter future Russian aggression, though the offer's vagueness prompted Kyiv to seek clarification. Zelenskyy expressed gratitude for Washington's willingness to support security guarantees for Ukraine, but noted that the details remained unclear. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio urged both Russia and Ukraine to make concessions for peace, acknowledging that the U.S. might not be able to create a scenario to end the war. A Russian drone attack on an apartment block in Kharkiv resulted in 5 deaths and over a dozen injuries. Transitioning to Hong Kong, independence. Activist Tony Chung has been granted asylum in the UK, 2 years after fleeing the Chinese region. Chung, 24, shared the news on his Instagram page, a day after former Hong Kong legislator Ted Hui announced he had been granted asylum in Australia. Both Chung and Hui are among dozens of pro-democracy activists targeted with arrest warrants and Hong Kong dollar bounties by authority. In the United Kingdom, Labour needs to pick things up after a tough first year, according to London Mayor Sadiq Khan. Khan expressed confidence that the party will turn it round while addressing an audience at the Edinburgh Fringe. WHAM prices are approximately £11,000, sterling $900, cheaper than 3 months prior, as sellers compete for attention during the market's summer lull. Average asking prices fell 1.3% to £368,740 sterling this month, property website Rightmove said on Monday. Shifting focus to England, patients now have greater access to important tests such as MRI scans and endoscopies in the evenings and weekends. This is due to the government's increase in the number of community diagnostic centers, CT's offering out-of-hours services. Finally, in New Zealand, Prime Minister Christopher Luxon did not stay up for the call with Ukraine due to the unfavorable time zone. China is actively working to refine Russian oil for sale on the global market. In Alaska, China urged all parties to agree to Ukraine peace talks in discussions with Russian President Vladimir Putin. However, European envoys in Beijing are considering boycotting China's upcoming military parade due to Putin's attendance and the potential participation of Russian troops, given Moscow's actions in Ukraine. Domestically, the Supreme People's Court in China issued guidelines to implement the Private Economy Promotion Law, aiming to legally protect private enterprises by ensuring equal treatment, regulatory compliance, and a fairer judicial system. Simultaneously, the state planner is cracking down on herd behavior in emerging industries, specifically targeting the influx of capital into sectors like electric vehicles, batteries, and solar energy. Cambrican Technologies, a Chinese semiconductor firm, plans to raise nearly $560 for AI chip development, reinforcing the country's tech self-sufficiency efforts. China's stock market is experiencing a surge, with the Shanghai Composite Index rising 0.9% to 3,078 0.03, reaching a level not seen since August 19, 2015, driven by investors shifting from bonds and bank deposits to equity. Major pharmaceutical companies such as Jiangsu Hengrui Pharmaceuticals and Hansa Pharmaceutical Group anticipate significant profit increases due to novel drug rollouts and technology licensing. Hengrui expects its net profit for the first half of the year to increase by 40% to 4.1 billion yuan. The nation is also addressing corruption within ethnic affairs, with investigations into officials including Kazala, Tibetan, former chairman of Tibet, Lan Tianli, Zhuang, chairman of Guangxi, and Lu Wei, former chairwoman of Ningxia. A growing number of women-only co-living spaces are flourishing, offering a haven from social pressures. The humanoid robot games in Beijing highlighted both the advancements and limitations in robotics. China has criticized the United States for allegedly using human rights as a bargaining chip, citing hypocrisy within the U.S. political system, unequal social welfare, widespread racism, and the politicization of immigration. China also expressed strong dissatisfaction to Japan after Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba sent a ritual offering to a controversial shrine honoring war criminals. Switching to the United States, President Donald Trump is scheduled to meet with Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelenskyy in Washington. China has accused the United States of using human rights as a bargaining chip in its latest annual report on the issue, criticizing the hypocrisy of the U.S. political system, its unequal social welfare, widespread racism, and the politicization of immigration. Senator Marco Rubio has stated that Europe can increase its sanctions efforts. Turning to India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had been moving to align the country with the United States and freeze out China. Now efforts to rebuild ties between the Asian giants are gaining momentum. Meanwhile, Russia is refining oil in China, which is then sold on the global market. European envoys in Beijing are considering boycotting China's upcoming military parade due to President Vladimir Putin's attendance and the potential participation of Russian troops given Moscow's actions in Ukraine. In Alaska, China urged all parties to agree to Ukraine peace talks at the meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. In Japan, China has expressed strong dissatisfaction after Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba sent a ritual offering to a controversial shrine that honors war criminals on the 80th anniversary of Japan's surrender. Across the Atlantic, Swiss watchmaker Swatch apologized and removed an advert featuring a model pulling the corners of his eyes after the image prompted accusations of racism and calls for boycotts on Chinese social media. The Swatch Group sought to sincerely apologize for any distress or misunderstanding this may have caused. Finally, in Ukraine, President Donald Trump is scheduled to meet with President Volodymyr Zelenskyy in Washington. China calls for all parties to agree new Ukraine peace talks at the meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska. Australia. An Australian court has levied a record $90 million fine on Qantas Airways for illegally dismissing 1820 baggage handlers and ground staff in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is in addition to the $120 million, US $78 in compensation Qantas will pay to the sacked workers, raising the total cost to over $200 million. Alphabet's Google was also sued by Australia over the anti-competitive Google search deals with telecom operators Telstra and Singapore Telecommunications-owned Optus, with Google agreeing to pay a $36 million fine. Separately in Sydney, a small plane crashed on a golf course, but both passengers escaped without serious injury. Asylum is being granted in Australia to activists fleeing authorities in Hong Kong. Xinjiang, Vice President of the Asia Society and Managing Director of its Center for China Analysis, CA, co-founded with Kevin Rudd, former Prime Minister of Australia, focuses his research on the interplay between domestic politics and foreign policy in the United States and China. The United States. The U.S. State Department has stopped issuing visitor visas to Palestinians from Gaza seeking urgent medical treatment. In Brooklyn, New York City, a shooting at a club resulted in 3 fatalities, with multiple shooters believed to be involved. A U.S. court overturned a government order allowing fishing in protected Pacific waters, a victory for Hawaiian conservationists. Economists are expressing doubt that US duties will lead to a resurgence of US factory jobs, citing the erratic rollout of Trump's tariffs. Donald Trump claimed that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy could end the war with Russia almost immediately, while ruling out retaking Russian-occupied Crimea or joining NATO. Some Chinese universities appear to be distancing themselves from us. Researcher Darius Longarino, following social media criticism in China regarding his past remarks on Xinjiang. War. South Korea and the United States have begun their annual large-scale joint military exercise, Ulchi Freedom Shield, with 21,000 soldiers participating in computer-simulated drills to enhance their ability to respond to threats from North Korea. Seoul has also ordered the partial, phased implementation of existing pacts made with North Korea. These joint drills are occurring amidst discussions about increased payments from South Korea for the stationing of US troops. Philippines. Lockheed Martin plans to establish an R&D facility in Manila in partnership with a major Philippine university. This is seen as strengthening the Philippines' technological base and integrating it further into Washington's regional security framework. Israel continues its military operations in Gaza, exacerbating the humanitarian crisis with significant civilian displacement. The Israeli military's preparation for the forcible displacement of 1 million people from Gaza City has intensified fear. Attacks in Gaza City have forced starving Palestinians to flee. A video surfaced showing an Israeli drone strike, killing a Palestinian girl carrying water in Jabalia, northern Gaza. Amnesty International accuses Israel of a deliberate starvation policy in Gaza, citing testimonies from displaced Palestinians and medical staff treating malnourished children. The UN and aid groups have warned of a man-made famine with rising starvation deaths. Israel has heavily restricted aid allowed into Gaza, but it rejects claims of deliberate starvation. Despite the crisis, an Israel Democracy Institute (EDE) poll shows that 79% of Jewish Israelis are not very troubled or not troubled at all by reports of famine and suffering among Gaza's Palestinian population. Within Israel, public sentiment is divided, with large protests demanding government action to secure the release of hostages in Gaza and calling for a ceasefire. Demonstrations have included nationwide strikes and blocking major highways like the one connecting Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. An estimated 500,000 people have participated in these protests, reflecting growing public pressure on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Controversial statements from former Israeli intelligence chief Aharon Haliva have surfaced, advocating for a disproportionate response to the October 7th attacks, including a high Palestinian death toll. Israeli media has been criticized for initially ignoring the starvation crisis in Gaza, though increased global media attention has prompted some local outlets to report on the issue. A Hamas delegation is currently in Egypt to discuss a new Gaza truce plan. Shifting focus to Australia, far-right Israeli politician Simcha Rothman, known for his support of a plan to remove Palestinians from Gaza, has been denied entry ahead of a planned speaking tour in Sydney and Melbourne. Andrew Lay has publicly supported the cancellation of Rothman's visa. Separately, John O'Doniam, the Shadow Minister for Education, has urged the Labour government and states to expedite changes regarding childcare safety reforms. Bolivia is preparing for a historic presidential runoff election. This follows a vote that potentially ends nearly 2 decades of leftist rule by the Movimiento al Socialismo, the MAS party, which rose to power with Evo Morales in 2005, faces the risk of losing its legal status if it fails to secure 3% of the vote. This occurs amidst the nation's most severe economic crisis in 40 years. The runoff features centrist Senator Rodrigo Paz Pereira of the Christian Democratic Party, a surprise frontrunner who secured over 32% of the vote with Edmund Lara as his running mate. He will compete against right-wing candidate Jorge Tuto Quiroga. Polling stations have closed, and vote counting has begun, with early results expected soon. This election may empower the right wing for the first time in decades. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy declared that territorial concessions are constitutionally impossible, a stance he reiterated before a White House meeting that included German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. This meeting took place after meetings between Trump and Putin in Alaska. Zelenskyy and European allies visited the White House after President Trump backed Russia's plan to end the war in Ukraine, which focuses on the Donbas region due to its traditional Russian-speaking population and its significance as the root causes of the war. According to Putin, Trump suggested Zelenskyy could end the war almost immediately. Following his meeting with Putin in Alaska, Trump adjusted his position on a ceasefire, initially emphasizing it, but subsequently downplaying it in favor of a permanent peace agreement. Evacuees from eastern Donetsk villages voiced strong opposition to ceding land to Russia for peace. A Russian drone attack on an apartment building in Kharkiv, a frequent target since the February 2022 invasion, resulted in 5 deaths. Russia's imperial Black Sea strategy emphasizes maritime power as a key element in its pursuit of regional dominance. Russia claimed to have thwarted a Ukrainian drone attack targeting the Smolensk nuclear power plant, which utilizes a reactor design similar to Chernobyl's. Following a meeting with President Trump in Alaska, Russian President Vladimir Putin proposed that Ukraine cede the remainder of the Donbas region to Moscow as a condition for ending hostilities. Putin's proposal focuses on the Donbas region due to its traditional Russian-speaking population and its significance as the root causes of the war, according to the Russian president. United States. Following his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, U.S. President Donald Trump met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy in Washington. After meeting with Putin, Trump altered his stance on the need for a ceasefire in the Russia-Ukraine war, initially prioritizing it, but later aligning himself with Putin by downplaying its importance, favoring a permanent peace agreement instead. Trump backed Russia's plan to end the war in Ukraine, which focuses on the Donbas region. Trump suggested Zelenskyy could end the war with Russia almost immediately. Oil prices decreased after the United States did not increase pressure on Russia to end the war in Ukraine, following the meeting between Trump and Putin. International relations. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, along with French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, hosted the Coalition of the Willing talks addressing the Russia-Ukraine conflict. After the Trump-Putin summit, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz also traveled to Washington for talks between Trump and Zelenskyy. United Kingdom. English councils are holding over £300 million in unspent funds that were specifically allocated to house Ukrainian refugees. This despite thousands of Ukrainians facing homelessness. This represents approximately a third of the total budget provided by central government, more than 3 years after Russia invaded Ukraine. Japan is actively enhancing its disaster preparedness, with plans to accelerate damage assessments by deploying specialists rapidly to disaster zones. Despite these efforts, a concerning number of municipalities, almost half, admit their evacuation shelters fail to meet national standards for sufficient toilet facilities and living space. Regarding international affairs, Japan is paying close attention to President Trump's efforts to broker a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia, recognizing the wide-ranging implications. To promote cultural exchange, JICA will designate 4 Japanese cities as hometowns for African nations. Japan and Germany are deepening their economic security cooperation, focusing especially on supply chains for semiconductors and crucial minerals, confirmed by Foreign Minister Takeshi Iwaya and German counterpart Johann Wadeful. In the space sector, Firefly Aerospace is considering Japan as a launch site for rockets aimed at the Asian market, marking its potential debut in Asia. American lawmakers are looking to Japan's shipbuilding prowess to revitalize the U.S. industry and counter China. The Japanese embassy in the Philippines alerted Japanese citizens after 2 men were killed in robberies in Manila. Domestically, a Vietnamese man faces charges for allegedly killing a woman during a robbery in Imari. A 98-year-old woman recounted her brother's death caused by a dummy atomic bomb, revealing the U.S. military's use of these bombs for training before deploying atomic weapons. Japanese camera manufacturers are experiencing a resurgence, expanding their product lines following increased sales, with fixed-lens digital compact cameras gaining traction. The United States recently hosted a high-stakes White House meeting concerning the Russia-Ukraine war, bringing together President Donald Trump, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and key European leaders. This included European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte. Leaders from Britain, Finland, France, Germany, and Italy also participated, signaling a united front in support of Ukraine. The gathering sought to reinforce Zelenskyy's position and avoid a recurrence of a prior tense exchange with Trump from February. Before this meeting, the United States had reportedly pressured Zelenskyy to consider Russian demands. These demands included abandoning Ukraine's NATO ambitions and ceding control of Crimea, with Trump suggesting these concessions would swiftly end the conflict. Adding a layer of complexity, the United States envoy indicated that President Vladimir Putin had, at a prior summit, agreed to a security guarantee for Ukraine. This guarantee, according to the envoy, would be similar to the protections offered by NATO's Article 5. Canada is currently battling severe wildfires, affecting both the Prairie provinces and the Atlantic region, straining emergency resources. Mandatory evacuations have been ordered in Newfoundland and Labrador, displacing thousands in eastern Canada. Adding to the disruption, Air Canada faced a strike by roughly 10,000 flight attendants protesting low wages and unpaid work. The strike impacted over 100,000 travelers. Air Canada accused the Flight Attendants Union of defying a return-to-work order from the Canadian Industrial Relations Board and deemed their actions illegal, but has announced plans to resume flights. Spain is grappling with severe wildfires, marking one of the worst seasons in 20 years, especially impacting the Galicia region with at least 20 major fires blazing across the country amid a relentless heat wave. Temperatures are soaring potentially to 45 degrees Celsius, 113 Fahrenheit, intensifying the crisis. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has interrupted his vacation to address the emergency. Reinforcing firefighting efforts, Spain has deployed 500 additional soldiers, supplementing the existing forces. The country is also anticipating support from the Netherlands and other European nations in the form of water-dumping aircraft, to bolster the fight against at least 12 major fires. Pakistan is currently struggling with severe floods that have caused at least 337 deaths, pushing the overall death toll past 600 since June, due to intense monsoon rain. Rescue efforts, briefly halted by heavy rain, are now back underway in affected regions. The northwestern area was especially impacted, experiencing a rare cloudburst that caused the flooding and left over 150 individuals unaccounted for. Criticism has emerged from residents who claim insufficient evacuation warnings were provided by officials. The government has defended its flood response, even as authorities warn of continued deluges and possible landslides. Officials are attributing the extreme weather event to global warming's impact on altering monsoon patterns. Shifting focus, the United States is actively observing the dynamic between Pakistan and India. India is under pressure from the U.S. concerning its acquisition of Russian crude oil. U.S. Trade Advisor Peter Navarro insists these purchases finance the war in Ukraine and must cease. Navarro also accused India of operating as a global hub for Russian oil. Potential U.S. tariffs threaten Indian exporters, particularly in the gems and jewelry industry, sparking fears of job losses. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is slated to meet with Indian Prime Minister Modi and External Affairs Minister Jaishankar during a 2-day visit. In mountainous regions, cloudbursts are causing substantial damage due to concentrated heavy rainfall. The nation is also deeply involved in a missile race with Pakistan, investing heavily in advanced systems, a situation intensified by a deadly conflict in May. Pakistan is similarly grappling with cloudbursts, causing considerable damage in mountainous areas with intense rainfall. Mirroring India's situation, Pakistan is locked in a missile race, investing heavily in advanced missile systems. This arms competition follows a deadly 4-day conflict in May, underscoring heightened border hostilities between the two nuclear-armed nations. Germany's Foreign Minister Johann Waidful is pushing for escalated pressure on Russia, advocating for increased support to Ukraine to achieve a just and lasting peace. He also expressed worries about China's aggressive behavior concerning Taiwan prior to his trips to Japan and Indonesia. Waidful emphasized the robust strategic alliance between Germany and Japan. Shifting gears, Germany is contemplating halting humanitarian visa initiatives for Kremlin opponents fleeing Russia, potentially endangering many. Turning to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced new measures to support Ukraine, including financial aid and military assistance. Canada also reiterated its commitment to holding Russia accountable for its actions in Ukraine. These announcements came amidst growing domestic pressure to provide more support to the embattled nation. Canada is also grappling with internal debates over its own defense spending and its role within NATO. In the United States, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates again to combat inflation, sparking debate about the potential impact on economic growth. The U.S. government also unveiled new sanctions targeting individuals and entities involved in cybercrime. These actions reflect the U.S.'s ongoing efforts to address both domestic economic challenges and international security threats. The political landscape in the U.S. remains highly polarized, influencing policy decisions across various sectors. Syria's President Ahmed al-Sharaa champions national unity via dialogue, not violence, reflecting the nation's deep war fatigue. Al-Sharaa is actively pursuing a negotiated settlement. This aims to integrate the autonomous region in northeast Syria, currently under the control of U.S.-supported Kurdish fighters, directly into the existing governmental framework. His preference is to achieve unification through diplomacy, thereby averting further military confrontation. Meanwhile, an investigation by the Times reveals a grim reality. The Assad regime has allegedly separated hundreds of children from their family. The report details the mechanics of this operation and highlights the arduous journey of one family desperately trying to reunite. Myanmar is set to begin elections on December 28th, with further phases to be announced later. The Myanmar Election Commission is organizing the polls. These elections face widespread doubts regarding their legitimacy. This skepticism arises amidst continued civil conflict. The country has been unstable since the 2021 military coup that removed Aung San Suu Kyi's government. In New Zealand, a soldier harboring white supremacist ideologies was found guilty of attempted espionage by a military tribunal. This marks the first conviction of its kind in the nation's history. The soldier attempted to share sensitive materials, including military base maps and photographs, with an undercover operative. This operative was posing as an agent representing an unnamed foreign nation. For legal reasons, the court has withheld the identities of the soldier, the foreign country, and the undercover officer involved in the case. In Iraq, the excavation of a mass grave at the Al-Qasfa site, south of Mosul, has begun, revealing skulls and potentially holding the remains of 4,000 or more victims of the Islamic State group. Nigeria is grappling with a tragic boat accident in Sokoto State. The incident occurred on a river as a vessel carrying 50 passengers to the Goranyo market capsized. Over 40 people are currently missing, while approximately 10 individuals have been rescued from the waters. Malaysia is currently facing widespread outrage and protests following the tragic death of 13-year-old Zara Khairina Mahathir, allegedly due to bullying, prompting authorities to file charges against multiple suspects. Adding an unusual twist, a pig farming course at University Putra Malaysia's Sarawak campus has gone viral, leading to playful online interactions where Malaysians jokingly label their friends as babi, the Malay word for pig. Australia is currently witnessing an ecological anomaly in Nannup, Western Australia, where an extraordinary number of monarch butterflies have gathered. Experts suggest this butterfly boom could signal a surge in invasive weeds, posing a threat to the local ecosystem. Turning to Kuwait, authorities have detained 67 individuals linked to the illicit production of alcohol after 23 deaths. Kuwait's prohibition on alcohol imports fuels a black market, lacking safety standards, resulting in significant health hazards for consumers. South Korea, in collaboration with the United States, has initiated its yearly joint military exercise. The drill is designed to bolster readiness and defensive capabilities against potential North Korean aggression. Transitioning to the Middle East, the United States has enacted a temporary suspension of visitor visas specifically for individuals residing in Gaza. This action stems from an incident involving Fadi Alzont, a 6-year-old Gazan child seeking medical treatment within the U.S. Alzont's involvement in an obstruction incident. Captured and disseminated by Laura Luma prompted the visa suspension. The suspension remains active. Serbia's president, Aleksandar Vučić, has announced strict measures aimed at quelling anti-government protests. These protests have escalated into days of widespread riots across the nation. Demonstrators are challenging what they perceive as his increasingly autocratic rule. The government's response aims to restore order amidst escalating public unrest. Singapore is actively working to shape its future amid global uncertainties, as outlined by Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, who emphasized the importance of proactive measures during the nation's 60th year of independence. The focus is on expanding cross-border economic initiatives and revitalization projects in northern town. The Philippines is transforming its Agila Subic shipyard in Subic Bay to bolster its defense sector. The move aims to support Washington's naval strategies amid US-China tensions. The shipyard was formerly a subsidiary of South Korea's Hanjin heavy industries, but is now under new ownership. Romania sees volunteers dedicated to preserving its cultural heritage, notably the main thermal baths in Herculane, an ancient spa town, as young architects strive to revitalize the long-neglected resort. Transitioning to Senegal, the nation is advancing gender equality through a Schools for Husbands initiative. Imams, such as Ibrahima Diane, are teaching men the value of sharing household responsibilities and supporting their families. In Egypt, a tourism development is posing risks to the endangered green turtle population in Wadi al-Gamal. Construction near Ras Hankorap, a known habitat, is causing worries about the preservation of their nesting grounds. Meanwhile, France is bracing for unprecedented heat, with Paris potentially facing temperatures as high as 50 degrees Celsius. City officials are developing strategies to manage extreme heat conditions that could disrupt the capital. Turning to Belarus, opposition figure Sergei Tikhanovsky has been freed from prison, appearing significantly thinner after his confinement. His release, along with 13 other political prisoners, marks a notable diplomatic success. Hurricane Erin, after impacting Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, weakened to a Category 3 storm. Tropical storm warnings are active for the Turks and Caicos Islands, with a watch issued for the southeastern Bahamas. In Kenya, research from Siaya County indicates that distributing $1,000 to impoverished families in 3 phases between 2014 and 2017 significantly decreased child mortality rates by almost 50%. South Africa is embarking on a national dialogue to define its democratic future 3 decades after the end of apartheid. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.